anything like me, you absolutely love woodworking, but you've probably also realized by now that woodworking can be so expensive. The tools are very, very expensive, and if you're making fine woodworking projects, even the lumber can be really, really pricey. So in today's video, I'm going to give you 8 tips on how to save money while you are woodworking. And actually stick around to the very end of the video because I'll actually give you 2 bonus tips at the very end. So stay tuned for those. Okay, here we go. Tip number 1, use scrap wood to create your own epoxy stir sticks. I'm all the time in the shop using epoxy, whether it's for small projects or I'm doing an epoxy cutting board, whatever the case is, I'm always stirring up epoxy. And you can buy stir sticks online and they're not super expensive, but it's much cheaper to make your own, and it will also help you clean out some scrap wood in your shop. This is so simple, but taking a piece of scrap wood, cutting it up on the table saw into little strips of wood, make sure they don't have any dust on them, and then use it to stir up epoxy works super great, and it will save you a little bit of money in the woodworking shop. P.S. I have another epoxy tip coming in just a few minutes, so stay tuned for that. Number 2, buy in bulk. Now, this probably seems like this will not save you a lot of money, but I promise you it will. Whether it's glue, screws, foam brushes for finishing, when you buy in bulk consistently with things that you know you're always going to need, it will save you so much money. When it comes to something like wood glue, I will buy wood glue in gallons. I use this stuff all the time. And then I'll have 1 or 2 smaller wood glue dispensers that I can just constantly be refilling. Because this, at the time of me recording this video, is about maybe $11. This right here is about $40, and I can fill this up about 5 or 6 times with this gallon size container of wood glue. So buy in bulk and you'll basically get like, hey, every time you buy 6 of these, the 6th one's free, essentially. Same thing with screws, same thing with foam brushes. When you buy in bulk, you will save lots of money over the long haul. This next tip is one of my favorites. Number 3, get 5-gallon buckets from fast food restaurants. Now this 5-gallon bucket, it looks so clean. It smells like pickles because it is a pickle bucket, but I get these for free. If you go to a fast food restaurant, maybe a Subs place or any fast food restaurant that has pickles on the menu, more than likely they will either give you or sell you for like $2 these really high quality 5-gallon buckets. And what I use them for is I put them around the shop, next to my bandsaw, next to my table saw, spots where I'm going to be generating a lot of scrap lumber, and I just throw them in the bucket, and then when the bucket's full, I can take them out and dispose of those scrap pieces of wood. Tip number 4, when you are making projects, make them in batches. And this is especially true for smaller woodworking projects. If you like making cutting boards, which is one of my favorite projects, and by the way, I have several videos right up here on making charcuterie boards and cutting boards, so check out this playlist after this video. But let's say I was going to make this long grain cutting board, super simple. If I just made this start to finish in the shop, it would probably take me about 3, maybe 4 hours of work. Now, if I were to make 2 of these, would it take me double the time? No, it would actually only take me about 30 more minutes because I'm not having to reset up my table saw and dig through my scrap wood to get all the strips of wood. So when I build in batches, I'm becoming way more efficient. And so with cutting boards, I try to make them in at least batches of 4, and I sometimes go up to as much as batches of 10 or 12. And you will save so much time, and in the woodworking shop, time is money, especially if you're making these cutting boards to sell. So make small projects, cutting boards, charcuterie boards, whatever you're making, make them in batches. Time for epoxy tip number 2, and that is when you're at a restaurant, this is kind of like the pickle bucket idea, but so many restaurants use these plastic cups when you buy a soda, and so this might sound cheap, but I save these because these clear cups are amazing for mixing up small amounts of epoxy. So they're totally free. I just rinse them out with water, take them out of the store, leave them in the shop in a big stack on my workbench, and I've got free epoxy mixing cups. And if you try to buy the actual epoxy mixing cup at a hardware store, it's gonna cost you $5 or $10. And so hey, that's $5 or $10 in my pocket every single time I get one of these cups. Tip number 6. Now, I said at the beginning of this video that lumber can be super expensive, which is definitely true. So if you want to save some money on getting the lumber for your woodworking projects, get creative. And the place I would recommend that you start is Facebook Marketplace. Now, I know you will have to spend a little more time scouring Facebook Marketplace, maybe having to drive 30 or 45 minutes away from your shop to pick up the lumber that you get, but I promise you, you will most likely get a better deal. A lot of times people on Facebook Marketplace, they're just trying to get rid of stuff that is in their way. And so they're not really thinking about what some lumber might be worth. And so for them, it might just be worth it if you just show up and get it out of their way. And they're like, hey, take it for free or take it for half price, whatever it is, and you're helping them, and then you're getting a great deal on some lumber. I have a few more tips coming up, but really quickly I need to ask you a favor. If this video has been helpful for you, if maybe one of these tips you're thinking, I want to try that, or I've never thought about that before, if you could just hit the like button. It's the thumbs up button. It's right there at the bottom of your screen. It really helps me out. It's totally free. Doesn't affect you in any way. It would just mean the world to me. Thanks so much. Let's get into our next tip. Tip number 7, and this one really changed the way I think about working efficiently in the shop, especially when I started selling my woodworking projects. And here's the tip. It is to do glue ups at the end of your shop session. Let me explain what I mean. Many projects require 1 or 2 glue ups. In fact, right here, like this cutting board build that I made in this video up here in the corner, that was a 3 glue up project. So I was doing a lot of glue ups in that project. So if you're making something like a cutting board where you're gonna need to do 1 or 2 or 3 glue ups, do them at the end of the day. Once you put glue into clamps, there's really no way you can speed up that process. You gotta wait for that glue to cure. And so if you work in the evenings at the end of your night in the shop, if you do your glue up then, you're not having to waste any time waiting on a glue up to dry. It's doing it while you're asleep or while you're at work or whatever. So end your shop session, say that 7 times fast. 7 times, say it 5 times fast. End your shop session with a glue up, and that is a great key to working more efficiently. And once again, in the woodworking shop, time is money. Tip number 8, here we go. It is utilize the scrap wood that is in your shop. There are so many projects that you can make with a tiny amount of scrap wood, and if you have time, you're trying to generate some money by selling woodworking projects, use some scrap wood. Or if you're trying to get practice, use scrap wood. My top 3 favorite scrap wood projects are this. Number 1, cutting boards. I already told you about the playlist. I'll link it again right here, and it'll also be linked in the description, so check that out. But I have an entire playlist on making cutting boards, charcuterie boards, and you don't need a lot of wood to make these charcuterie boards and cutting boards. So that is a great scrap wood project. My second favorite scrap wood project, and this has probably been my best seller when I go to art shows and craft shows, is succulent planters. There are so many combinations and possibilities that you can use to build these succulent planters, and they're so much fun to make, and they sell like crazy. I usually sell mine with a planter for like $20, $25, and it's so easy. I have a video on how I make those right up here, and it's also in the description if you'd like to check that out. And my third favorite scrap wood project that is so easy, you can batch these out, it's coasters. People love coasters, they make great gifts, they sell pretty well at craft shows, and I'll be making a video on how I make those soon. So if you're interested in seeing that coaster video, subscribe to the channel. But in any case, those 3 projects, cutting boards, coasters, and succulent planters, you can make them out of scrap wood and sell them and generate some cash, that you can reinvest into your shop. Before we hop into my last 2 bonus tips on how you can save money, if this video has been helpful for you and you're like, hey, I'd love to stick around for future videos, hit the subscribe button. It's totally free, doesn't charge you anything. All it does is make my videos a little bit easier for you to find in the future, and I'd love to have you aboard as we're kind of continuing this woodworking journey together. So if you've enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button. Now it's time for the 2 bonus tips. Bonus tip number 1, I highly recommend buying nice tools. Now you might be thinking, wait a second, Ben, this is totally opposite. This is a video about saving money with woodworking, and you're saying that we need to spend more on tools. Yeah, pretty much. Every time I had bought a tool that I thought the quality's not as good, but it's cheaper, I've always regretted it because one, these tools do not last as long, and two, they usually don't make cuts or sand or whatever the tool is. They don't have as much precision, which so many times leads me to rework a project or rework something. Whenever I buy a nice tool, like a nice table saw or a nice impact driver and drill or a nice bandsaw or dust collector, I have never regretted it, and it's been dependable for me every time. If you buy something cheap and then it breaks a year later and you have to go back and buy something nice, it's just better to buy the nice thing in the first place. It saves you all that money that you would have spent on the cheap tool that's gonna break in 6 months. So buy nice, not twice. And my second bonus tip is this: monetize your woodworking. Try to find a way that you can not only be spending money on tools and equipment and supplies, but find a way that woodworking can make some money for you. And you can decide what your goals are for this. Maybe you just want to have woodworking pay for itself and you're not interested in making any money above what you spend on tools. Maybe you want this to be a side hustle. I really believe that woodworking can do either one of those things. But find a venue or an area to sell your woodworking projects. Or maybe you, like me, start making videos and posting them and teaching other people how to do woodworking. Whatever it is, find a way to monetize woodworking, and it will make your time in the shop pay for itself, and you might even get some money on the side. Well, hey, thanks so much for checking out this video. I hope it's been helpful for you. Now listen, I probably have missed lots of your favorite tips on how you save money in the woodworking shop. And so in the comments below, let me know, hey, what did I miss? What tips do you use to save money? I would love to learn from you. I'll be checking out the comments. If you haven't already, if you could like the video, I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe for future videos, and we'll talk to you very soon.